Amidst, which also released last week in theaters. And of course, this Vijay, Pooja Hegde, Yogi Babu movie, directed by Nelson Dilip Kumar, was another big movie that was supposed to blow our minds off. And did
And did
it.
it, Em?
Shreya.
What's the treetop?
Well, the treetop is, of course, it's a story of a former raw officer who is amongst the hostages in a mall takeover by terrorists and has to foil their plans and prevent the government from releasing a terrorist. It's a, oft repeated terrorist plan, and basically there's a personal cost attached to it. It's an anti-terrorist action flick, which it takes you some time getting used to it, because on one hand you feel it's like a Die Hard style siege thriller, but then at the back of it it's like a musical comedy of a handsome spy who also loves children, but he also excels at dismembering terrorists. So it's all of that put together, and that's the movie.
It is, it is. So Veera Raghava actually plays Vijay, and he is our raw agent, right? So he kind of like has this backstory where he's feeling a little betrayal from his own team and like his past team. And then all of a sudden, somewhere in the middle of God knows Chennai, he meets Pooja Hegde's character Preeti, and she's just suddenly proposes to him. She's like, you know what? I'm going to propose to you right here, right now, so that you can get this job in the security force agency. And I thought, like, let's just talk about that portion of the story for a quick second. Who thought to write it is my number one question. Who thought that that was the correct way to introduce him not only to the job but to his heroine? Like, I really want to know, what do you think was going through the writers' minds when they thought to introduce this concept?
I thought it was very cartoonish. I thought a lot of the movie was extremely
So
cartoonish.
caricaturish.
Very, very. I mean, it's like on one hand you're trying to portray this guy who's, he's a celebrated guy. He's
Mm-hmm.
you're okay. So which is this? He's chipmunk cheeked. Okay, so it's so he can dance and sing, and he's leaner, meaner, stronger, and then of course they also describe one of the songs describes him as a multi-faced tiger, some stuff like that. And at one point in the movie he's flying himself back from Pakistan in a borrowed military jet, and he's this great larger than life guy. And then there's this woman, and he's retired from Raw 11 years before the movie's present day, and in that he unintentionally blows up a little girl with a rocket launcher. And I mean, the entire plot is so crazed. So when that woman plot happens, you don't really blink an
Yeah, I
eyelid.
guess you're right. The whole story, like, I don't know what it is about the movies we watched this week, but sometimes you look at the storyline and there's so many portions where we were just like, what just happened? Hold on. Like, wait a second. What just happened? And why did it happen? And before you can even digest what your eyeballs just saw, we're thrown into more. Like, it's just unexplainable territory. So the story follows Vijay and Preeti, and they're going on this hunt with their boss, I believe, in this mall, which has actually been hijacked by terrorists. That's the premise of the story. And their ask is that the government release this like supreme terrorist or whoever from prison that they've already caught. They're basically making like a negotiation deal. They say, you release him and we'll release everybody in this mall. Like, we'll let this mall not, well, we won't hold this mall hostage anymore. And the whole story follows Vijay's character as he tries to like take them down, and without like releasing the terrorist, or like he tries to break their plan. And that's the whole story, which you think is like simple enough, right? You could probably get away with them having this like strong negotiation story, and you're like, that's fine, like that sounds really nice. Then you watch it and you're like, excuse me.
What the hell is happening?
Yeah, what? It really is that way because the story ends up being like weirdly wacky. The conversations are almost like exactly like, have you guys ever watched a soap opera or like a TV Hindi serial, but it's as if it was turned into a cartoon for kids and you mash that up and you turn it into a serious adult movie? And that's what, like, that's literally what we watched. I was like, what was going on? Like at so many points, I thought that there was I thought there was a lot of unnecessary emotion in random places. There's just like way too much. There's no need for character dynamism that much at all. Two, if you already portray the hero as somebody who's like this super great, super knowing all thing, why does he kind of like lose his credibility as he's going through the negotiation tactics, right? And why is Preeti there? Like, what role
Was
is
she
Preeti
doing there in
playing?
the first place? She absolutely had, she has all of 20 minutes in the entire movie and really nothing to do. Oh, we counted.
Nothing to do.
If you've seen Vijay's work before, if you've seen last year's Master, for example, he's not as inspiring as he was in that movie over here. Um, but it's overstuffed. This movie is overstuffed with a lot of tangential showcases for a lot of comic side characters, like Altaf, or the security company boss Dominic, or there's so many of these characters. Some characters are barely, like you said, Preeti. She's barely in the movie, and her fiance Ram. What the hell is that character? So there's so many digressions from the plot. It really takes an entire village to support the entire narrative, literally. There are some really good action sequences, of course, and most of the action sequences are really well designed, and they're really great. So the dancing is, it's okay. It's not, as I said, the chipmunk face really takes away the dance for me. So literally, but honestly, if you have to enjoy a movie like this, you have to really accept the inelegance of it, the inconsistency of it, and sometimes the really insane terms and conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some good comedy. I will say that there's like a little bits of like comedy in there, which I know very much appeals to Telugu audiences for anyone who watched. I actually could only watch it in Tamil, unfortunately, because even though I don't actually speak Tamil, I had to kind of read the subtitles. But even then, I still got a taste of like the comedy. But I feel like the hard part is when you're watching a movie in another language and they translate it for you, you lose the essence of the
Absolutely.
joke.
But also another thing, coming back to product placement, oh my God, it's so hard to
Oh
stay
my.
mad at a movie where there is bloody violence, there are corny jokes, literally. I mean, I don't know how at times when they translate it into another language, the corny jokes hit you. The entire product placement, especially in the mall, was
Oh,
little over the top.
it's
Literally
like
over the
you're
top.
seeing like United Colors of
Benetton, there's
Benetton.
pantaloons, the fruit shops, the every damn thing that you can think of.
Everything. Everything that if you go to like in any mall in India and you know those like the versions of their chain stores that you will see everywhere, those were 100% in this movie. Like if you guys just have a vision, what's the first store that you vision when you see a mall in India? It's in there. I promise you, you see it make a cameo. And you're like, what? Why? Like, why? I can't. I
Well,
don't actually know. Like,
what really worked for the movie, though, I have to say, was the hype that the songs created. I think there were two
yeah,
songs from the movie that went viral, and of course, Pooja Hegde, of course, everybody was looking at. She does get a raw deal. She's there barely for 20 minutes or so. We counted. Um, it's just that even though the songs are catchy, especially the Arabic two song that went pretty viral, um in spite of everything, the and that the fact that 80% of 80% of the story does happen inside the mall. I'll tell you the reasons why Beast didn't work for us. First reason, uh, they establish Vijay as a powerful beast who can get his mission right at any cost. But they don't create a human aspect of the guy.
yeah.
even though he's made mistakes, he's killed a kid and everything, but there's nothing human about him. The villain is weak from the start, so it just doesn't give us enough to. I mean, there's no comparison between the hero and the villain, so it is a.
Right. There's like this terrorist group and they're asking for it, but they don't fill this concept of an antagonist. Like they really don't fill those shoes solidly.
And so that makes the third reason is the convenient, predictable plot really kills the entire movie for us, because you know what's going to happen next, and you just sit there and you watch them go through the motions without really. There are no hooks there left for you to really use your brains for, or wait for a twist, or there's no surprise there anymore.
Yeah, there really isn't. I agree with that.
And also
I
also I think, I don't know how the original language worked, but even in the Hindi language, there's so many repeat of the dialogue, so many of the there's so much repetition happening that I think it just lost the humor. I think it's a lot of maybe it got lost in translation, but I thought there was no humor.
I agree with that. So I actually honestly I laugh at everything. So I want to make a disclaimer to everyone that while I do see the comedy in this movie, I know that a lot of you will not see the comedy in this movie because I see the comedy in everything. So that is a disclaimer. There are jokes, they're corny, they're kind of like those like slap on the knee, like, oh, you're like you hear it and you're like, huh. But it's not like ha 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 kind of joke. And there's just so much in this, like 80% of the story happens in this mall. And there's has to be a certain kind of talent for you to direct a movie that stays stationary in like one specific location and the entire plot revolves around that location. Like it takes
80%
a
of the movie
lot.
is inside the mall. It
It
is
is.
there. So yes, that was kind of, yeah. But
Yes.
he does rescue the hostages, but he fails to save the movie.
Yeah. So we did